I'm Andrew Wright, 26 years old, and until recently I thought I had a handle on things. Minneapolis in late fall can be brutally cold, but inside my small, sunlit apartment in Uptown it felt almost cozy. I'd spent the last year meticulously rebuilding my life, brick by painstaking brick after it had been, for lack of a better term, detonated. The silence in the apartment was usually a comfort, a testament to my newfound peace. No more late-night arguments, no more tiptoeing around someone else's moods, no more feeling like I was constantly falling short. Just me, my old worn-out armchair, and the satisfying hum of my laptop as I worked on client projects. I was a freelance web designer, and the flexible hours suited me, allowing me to pretend I was in control of my time, even if most of it was spent avoiding thoughts of the past. It was a Tuesday morning, crisp and bright outside, the kind of day that usually made me feel optimistic despite the chill. I was nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee, staring at a blank screen, trying to summon the motivation to start coding. My phone buzzed on the table beside me, and I picked it up without much thought. It was a text from Mike, an old college buddy. Mike wasn't one for small talk, so I braced myself for a quick question about a mutual friend or a proposal for a beer run. What I got instead was a single, cryptic sentence. Dude, did you see this? Beneath it was a link innocent enough to a local news outlet's social page. My finger hovered over it, a strange sense of dread already coiling in my gut. I almost didn't click. A part of me, the part that had spent 12 months diligently patching up old wounds, screamed at me to put the phone down, to ignore it, to keep the fragile peace I'd painstakingly constructed. But curiosity, that oldest and most persistent of human flaws, won out. I tapped the link. It was a picture, a wedding picture, and there she was, my ex, Sarah, beaming in a white dress, holding a bouquet of roses. And standing beside her, looking equally smug and triumphant, was him, Mark, her coworker, the man who had been the other guy, the reason my world had splintered into a million sharp, jagged pieces. The man she had tearfully sworn was just a friend, even as the evidence piled up against her. The coffee cup slipped from my fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor. The sound was deafening in the sudden, complete silence of the apartment. I didn't even register the heat or the mess. All I could see was that picture. Sarah's laugh, which used to be music to my ears, now seemed like a cruel, mocking cackle. Her eyes, once full of a warmth I believed was reserved solely for me, now sparkled with a joy that had nothing to do with me, everything to do with him. For 2 years, Sarah and I had built a life together. We defound that perfect little apartment, decorated it with mismatched furniture and thrift store finds, dreaming of a future that felt tangible, solid. We talked about adopting a dog, about road trips, about one day maybe buying a small house with a yard. I believed every word, poured my heart into every shared moment. I'd been so damn sure. When she started staying late at work, first an hour, then two, then whole evenings, I'd been concerned but not suspicious. Not at first. I trusted her, believed in her dedication to her career. When she started bringing up Mark more often, describing him as a great guy and so supportive, I'd even tried to be happy for her for finding a good colleague. I was that naive, that trusting. The truth, when it finally hit, was like a physical blow. It was November, nearly a year ago. I remember the chill in the air, the way the bare branches of the trees outside our window looked like skeletal fingers. I'd found the texts, little snippets, intimate jokes, plans to meet for drinks that were clearly not about work. My heart had sunk, a leaden weight in my chest. When I confronted her, she cried, of course. Big theatrical tears, begging me to forgive her, swearing it was a mistake, that it meant nothing, that she loved me. But the words rang hollow, lost in the echoing void of my shattered trust. The image of her with him, laughing, touching, was already seared into my mind. I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't unfeel it. I didn't forgive her. How could I? The betrayal was too deep, too fundamental. The foundation of our relationship, built on honesty and mutual respect, had crumbled into dust. I packed my bags, not bothering to sort through our shared things, just my clothes, my laptop, a few books, and the guitar I hadn't touched in months. I left the apartment, left her, left the ghost of what we'd been. That was it. I hadn't seen her, hadn't heard from her, hadn't so much as whispered her name aloud since. I'd actively avoided anything that might bring her back into my orbit. I'd unfollowed mutual friends, changed my usual coffee shop, even started taking different routes on my daily runs through the neighborhood just to avoid any accidental encounters. It worked. I had successfully erased her from my immediate physical world, but that picture, it brought it all rushing back, a tidal wave of emotions I thought I'd successfully dammed up. The hurt, the humiliation, the sheer burning injustice of it all. Here I was, picking up the pieces, still occasionally wrestling with the ghosts of a broken future, and she was getting married to him, the man she'd cheated on me with. It felt like a cosmic joke, a cruel punchline to a tragedy that had only ever been funny to one side. The immediate shock gave way to cold, simmering rage. Why did she get to be happy? Why did she get to ride off into the sunset with the guy she'd stolen behind my back while I was left to deal with the rubble? I paced my small living room, the shattered ceramic of the coffee cup crunching under my bare feet. My hands clenched into fists, then unclenched, then clenched again. The anger felt like a physical heat radiating from my core. For months, I'd told myself I didn't want anything from her. I didn't want her back, didn't want an apology, didn't want closure. I just wanted to forget, to move on, and I had, or so I thought, but this was different. This wasn't just about moving on anymore. This was about a blatant disregard for the pain she'd caused, a public display of happiness built on the ruins of my trust. A dark thought began to coalesce in my mind, a whisper at first, then a roar. Maybe it was for the best, some part of me tried to rationalize, clinging to the old narrative of acceptance. Maybe he knocked her up and they had to, that's what people say, isn't it, to make themselves feel better, but the idea felt hollow, flimsy. It didn't diminish the sting of the picture, the triumphant grins, the pristine white dress. It didn't erase the fact that she was living a picture-perfect life with the very man who had helped dismantle mine. The feeling of injustice was overwhelming. It wasn't just that she was happy. It was that she was happy with him, that their happiness was directly linked to my pain. It felt like a victory lap over my shattered heart. I had always believed in fairness, in karma, but where was it now? My rational mind, the part that prided itself on logic and composure, was screaming for answers, for balance. And if the universe wasn't going to provide it, then maybe, just maybe, I would have to find a way to tip the scales myself. The seed of a plan, vague and undefined, began to take root in the fertile ground of my simmering resentment. It wasn't about getting her back. It was about evening the score, about making sure that their perfect picture wasn't quite so perfect after all. The cold in Minneapolis suddenly felt less external and more internal, a chilling resolve solidifying in my veins. This wasn't just about venting anymore. It was about something more, something much, much darker. I'm Andrew, 26 years old, and Minneapolis has always been home. It's a city of lakes and green spaces, a place where the harsh winters forge a certain kind of resilience in people, or at least that's what I'd always told myself. I worked a steady job in IT, nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills and allowed me to pursue my real passion, restoring old cars. My garage, tucked behind a duplex in a quiet neighborhood, was my sanctuary. The smell of oil, gasoline, and old leather was a perfume to me. It was there, wrench in hand, that I felt most at peace, most like myself. For 2 years, my life had a different kind of peace, one that revolved around Sarah. We met at a friend's barbecue. She was all bright eyes and quick laughter, a nurse with a passion for baking. We clicked instantly. Our relationship was easy, comfortable. We moved in together after a year, finding a cozy apartment in Uptown that felt just right. Our days fell into a rhythm, mornings with coffee and quiet chatter, evenings cooking together, weekends spent exploring local breweries, hiking trails, or just curled up on the couch watching old movies. We talked about the future, about saving for a house, maybe even a dog. The idea of settling down, of building a life with her, felt natural, inevitable. I thought I had it all figured out. I was a bit of a traditional guy, I guess. Loyalty was big for me. I put everything into our relationship, trusted her completely. And why wouldn't I? She was kind, funny, smart. She made me feel like the best version of myself. We had our disagreements, sure, every couple does, but they were always small, easily resolved. I never imagined there was anything lurking beneath the surface. My world, the one I had so carefully constructed, felt solid, unshakable. The cracks started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Late nights at work, she'd say, extra shifts. I didn't think anything of it at first. She was a dedicated nurse, and I admired her work ethic. Then came the phone calls she'd take in another room, the hushed tones, the sudden changes in her schedule. My gut, usually pretty quiet, started to hum with a low, disquieting note. I tried to push it down to rationalize. She was stressed, I told myself. Work was demanding. I didn't want to be the suspicious boyfriend. But the hum grew louder, became a persistent thrumming in my ears. One Tuesday evening, she said she had a late meeting. I just finished a particularly stubborn carburetor rebuild and was covered in grease, ready for a shower and an early night. Something in me, some instinct I couldn't ignore, told me to follow her. It felt wrong, invasive, but the knot in my stomach was tighter than ever. I cleaned up quickly, pulled on a fresh shirt, and hopped in my old Ford pickup, trying to look casual as I pulled out of the driveway a few minutes after she did. She drove to a restaurant downtown, one we'd often gone to. My heart sank. This wasn't a work meeting. I parked a block away, killed the engine, and watched, and then I saw him. He was tall, clean-cut, wearing a suit, the kind of guy who looked like he'd walked straight out of a corporate brochure. They sat at a secluded booth in the corner, laughing, leaning in close, too close. The knot in my stomach twisted into a painful vice. It wasn't just a friendly dinner, not with the way she looked at him, the easy intimacy of their gestures. It was a date. My girlfriend on a date with another man. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, the humid Minneapolis air suddenly thick and suffocating. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. The anger, hot and searing, started to bubble up, but it was quickly doused by a cold, numbing disbelief. This couldn't be happening, not Sarah, not us. The future we'd planned, the life we were building, it was all a lie, a cruel, elaborate joke. I didn't confront her then, not directly. I drove home, the image of them seared into my mind. When she finally came back hours later, smelling faintly of the restaurant's food and something else, something sweet and unfamiliar, I just looked at her. My silence was louder than any accusation. She saw it in my eyes, I think. The carefully constructed facade crumbled. Her face went pale. The tears came quickly, a torrent of them, along with the desperate pleas for forgiveness. She swore it was a mistake, that he meant nothing, that she loved me. Her voice cracked, begging me not to leave. But the words felt hollow. Each one was another stab to the heart. How could I forgive her? How could I ever trust her again? The image of her laughing with him, leaning into him, replayed in my mind like a broken record. My trust, my loyalty, my entire perception of our shared life, it was all shattered beyond repair. I couldn't look at her without seeing him, without feeling the sting of betrayal. The decision was swift, brutal, and utterly necessary. I packed a bag that night, just the essentials. The apartment, once our home, now felt like a prison. Every object, every memory was tainted. I told her I was leaving, that there was no going back. Her pleas turned to sobs, but I was numb. The pain was too deep, too raw. I just needed to escape. I called a friend, crashed on his couch for a few nights, and then started looking for a new place, something small just for me. Moving out of our apartment was the hardest thing I'd ever done, a physical wrenching away from everything I thought I knew. I avoided her calls, her texts. I needed distance, needed to heal, needed to forget. The silence that followed was deafening, but it was a silence I desperately needed. For months, I hadn't heard a word from her, hadn't seen her. I thought I was finally turning a corner, putting it all behind me. Then came the news delivered by a mutual acquaintance, casual as the weather. Sarah was getting married to him, the man from the restaurant. The anger, dormant for so long, flared up with a vengeance. Why did she get to be happy? Why did she get to walk away from the wreckage she created and build a new life, seemingly without consequence, while I was left picking up the pieces? It burned, a low, persistent fire in my gut. The biting Minneapolis wind always felt like it was trying to remind me of something, some deep chill that seeped into your bones. For the longest time, I thought it was just winter. Turns out, some things cut deeper than ice. My name is Andrew Wright, and I'm 26 years old. I've always been a pretty easygoing guy, the kind who likes a quiet night in with a good book or some video games more than a crowded bar. I work in IT, which suits me fine. It's logical, predictable, and doesn't ask too much of my emotions, which, as I've learned, is a good thing. I used to think I had it all figured out, or at least the parts that mattered. For 2 years, my world revolved around Sarah. We met at a mutual friend's bonfire by Lake Harriet, her laugh echoing off the water, bright and infectious. I was captivated. She was everything I wasn't: vibrant, outgoing, always pushing me to try new things. I was the anchor, she was the sail, and we moved through life together, or so I believed. We moved into a little apartment in Uptown, a cozy place with a view of the city's skyline from our small balcony. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. We filled it with cheap IKEA furniture, mismatched mugs, and the comfortable silence of two people who knew each other's rhythms. Our days were simple. We'd wake up, share a quick breakfast, then head off to our respective jobs. Sarah worked in marketing, always buzzing with new ideas, while I navigated the quiet hum of servers and networks. Evenings were for cooking together, sometimes binging a new show, other times just talking about our days, our dreams. We talked about a future, about getting a dog, maybe a house someday. I remember picturing it so clearly, a little patch of green for the dog to run, a porch swing, Sarah's laugh filling the air. It felt real, tangible, a future I was building brick by brick, piece by piece. The first crack in that carefully constructed world was so subtle, I almost missed it. Sarah started working later, often coming home after I'd already eaten. She'd explain it away as a big project, a demanding client, a new initiative at her company. I understood. Work was work, and sometimes you just had to put in the hours. I'd save her a plate and we'd eat late, sometimes with her looking tired, her eyes a little distant. I'd ask if she was okay and she'd smile, a quick dismissive gesture, and say she was just tired. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? This was Sarah, my Sarah, the woman I loved, the woman I trusted implicitly. Then came the little things. Her phone, once left casually on the table, was now almost always face down or tucked away in her pocket. She'd get text messages late at night, and when I'd glance over, she'd quickly angle the screen away. A new perfume, something floral and sharp that wasn't her usual soft scent. I asked about it, and she said a coworker had given her a sample. I bought it, still trusting, still willing to believe. Looking back, I feel like a fool, blind to the obvious. The signs were there, painted in broad strokes, but I was too busy painting my own picture of our happy life to see them. The final shattering came in November. It was a Tuesday, a cold, gray day that matched the feeling that would soon settle in my gut. Sarah was out late again, supposedly at a team dinner. I was restless. Something felt off, a nagging itch I couldn't scratch. I picked up her tablet, intending to watch a movie on it while I waited for her. She hadn't logged out of her work email. I know, I shouldn't have looked. But a subject line caught my eye, something about tonight was amazing. My heart started to pound, a frantic drum against my ribs. Curiosity, or maybe a dawning dread, pushed me to click. It wasn't just an email. It was a chain of emails, intimate, flirtatious, deeply personal, spanning weeks. Emails between Sarah and someone named Mark. My breath hitched. Mark. The new guy at her office she'd mentioned a few times, always casually, always as a coworker. The words on the screen blurred, then sharpened, each one a dagger. Pet names, inside jokes, references to late nights that weren't spent working, but in cheap motel rooms or hushed conversations in dimly lit bars. My stomach dropped, a sickening lurch, and a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. My world, the one I'd built with such care, imploded. I didn't cry, not then. I was too numb, too shocked. My hands trembled as I scrolled through more messages, each one a fresh wound. Plans to meet, apologies for having to lie to me, promises of a future together, a future that didn't include me. My mind raced, trying to put the pieces together. The late nights, the phone secrecy, the new perfume, it all clicked into place, a monstrous, ugly puzzle. The anger, hot and searing, began to rise, quickly followed by a profound sense of betrayal. Sarah, my Sarah, had been living a lie, and I had been a character in her twisted play. She walked in around midnight, humming a little tune, her cheeks a bit flushed from the cold. She didn't even notice the tablet on the coffee table, the open email still glowing on the screen. She started talking about her team dinner, about how boring it was, how she couldn't wait to just crawl into bed. Her words felt like a physical assault. "You didn't go to team dinner, did you, Sarah?" My voice was flat, devoid of emotion, a stranger's voice. She stopped, her hand still on her coat zipper. She looked at me, a flicker of confusion, then realization in her eyes as they landed on the tablet. The color drained from her face. Andrew, what are you talking about? Her voice was thin, reedy. I picked up the tablet, turning it to face her, the incriminating emails blazing between us. Sarah, this is what I'm talking about. Mark, the late nights, the lies. Her composure crumbled. Her eyes welled up and she started to tremble, just like my hands had. Andrew, please. Let me explain, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think, I cut her off, my voice still eerily calm despite the raging storm inside me. You've been cheating on me, Sarah, with your coworker while I was sitting here waiting for you, trusting you. The tears started to fall, silent at first, then a full-blown sob. She dropped her coat to the floor and took a step towards me, her hands reaching out. I'm so sorry, Andrew, please forgive me, it was a mistake. A terrible, horrible mistake. I don't know why I did it. I love you, Andrew, only you. The words were empty, hollow, stripped of all meaning. Love, how could she say she loved me when she was doing this? The betrayal was too deep, the wound too fresh. Her begging, her tears, they did nothing but solidify my resolve. This wasn't a mistake, it was a choice made over and over again. Don't, I said, stepping back, putting distance between us. Don't say that, don't lie to me again, there's nothing to forgive. We're done, Sarah, it's over. Her sobs intensified. She pleaded, she begged, she swore it would never happen again, that she would cut off all contact with him, that she would do anything to make it right. But the images from the emails, the words, were burned into my mind. I saw her with him, laughing, touching, sharing moments that were supposed to be ours. The thought of touching her, of being near her, was repugnant. I spent that night on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the ceiling, the city lights reflecting faintly on the dark glass of the window. She cried herself to sleep in our bed, the bed we had shared for 2 years. The next morning I was already packing. I didn't even look at her as I gathered my things, shoving them into bags. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, her face puffy, her eyes red. She tried to talk to me, tried to reach out again, but I just shook my head. There's nothing left to say, Sarah, I told her, my voice still flat, detached. I'm moving out. I didn't have a plan. I called a buddy, Mark, who had a spare room in his duplex. He didn't ask too many questions, just said, come on over, man, we'll figure it out. That was November. I packed what I could fit in my car, left the rest, and drove away from that apartment, away from her, away from the shattered fragments of the future I had imagined. The first few weeks were a blur of numb anger and gnawing emptiness. The duplex was fine, Mark was great, but the quiet of my new room felt louder than any argument. Minneapolis winter settled in, and so did a deep, unsettling loneliness. I threw myself into work, into video games, anything to occupy my mind and keep it from replaying the scenes, from wondering what I had missed, what I could have done differently. Nothing, I realized. It was never about me. It was about her choices. I avoided places we used to go, restaurants, parks, even certain streets. The city, once so full of shared memories, now felt haunted. Friends tried to reach out, but I mostly just wanted to be left alone. I was functional, I went to work, I paid my bills, but I was a ghost walking through the motions. The feeling of why does she get to be happy and I don't was a constant whisper in the back of my mind. It was irrational, I knew. I didn't want her back, not after what she did. But the unfairness of it all, that she could just move on seemingly unscathed, while I was left picking up the pieces, gnawed at me. Months passed, winter turned to spring, then summer. I started to heal slowly, painfully. The sharp edges of betrayal dulled, replaced by a persistent ache. I started going to the gym, eating better, trying to build a new routine, a new life for myself. I hadn't seen or heard from Sarah since the day I moved out. I didn't want to. I'd blocked her number, unfriended her on social media. I wanted her out of my life, a clean break, a distant memory. Then last week it happened. I was at the grocery store just grabbing some milk and eggs. I ran into a mutual acquaintance, someone I hadn't seen in ages. We exchanged pleasantries and then, without thinking, he said, "Hey, did you hear about Sarah? She got married." The milk carton slipped from my hand, splashing onto the floor. Married Sarah, my ex, to him. The other Mark, the affair partner. The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. It was an instant rewind, pulling me back to that cold November night, to the burning shame and fury of discovery. All that healing, all that progress felt like it evaporated in an instant. She got to be happy. She got to move on, to build a new life with the man she cheated on me with. And here I was, still navigating the wreckage, still trying to put myself back together. The old anger, dormant for months, roared back to life, hotter and more intense than ever before. This wasn't just about hurt anymore. This was about justice. And I suddenly knew with a chilling certainty that I wasn't done with Sarah yet. Not by a long shot. She might be happy now, but I was going to make sure that wouldn't last. I'm Andrew Wright, 26 years old, and Minneapolis has always been home. Not the kind of place where you're born and instantly know you'll die here, but the kind where the changing seasons become a part of you. The harsh winters make you appreciate the brief, vibrant summers and the long, slow springs. I work as a graphic designer for a mid-sized marketing firm downtown. It's a good gig, pays the bills, and lets me flex some creative muscles. I spend my evenings messing around with digital art, usually abstract stuff, or hitting the local gym. Weekends. Mostly trying out new breweries or catching a Timberwolves game with my buddies. It was a pretty simple, pretty good life, at least it felt that way until recently. My life revolved around Sarah for 2 years. Sarah with her bright, slightly too loud laugh and the way she'd always remember the tiny, insignificant details I'd forget. We met at a friend's birthday party and she just sort of fit. She worked in finance, a world away from my creative chaos, but somehow we clicked. We moved into a small apartment in Uptown, a cozy place with a view of Lake Calhoun from the tiny balcony. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. We talked about future trips, about getting a dog, maybe even about how many kids we wanted someday. It felt real, like the kind of real that sticks. I saw a future, a long, comfortable, happy one stretching out before us, neatly laid out like a design brief I actually enjoyed working on. Then came last November, and the design brief turned into a crumpled, discarded mess. It started subtly, the way these things often do. Sarah was working later and later. Big project, she'd say, or client emergency. I didn't think much of it at first. Work can be demanding. I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? We were building a life together. But then the little things piled up. Her phone always faced on, her jumping whenever a new text came through. The vague answers to simple questions about her day. My gut started to twist. It wasn't a sharp pain, more like a dull, persistent ache that wouldn't go away. One evening, I decided to surprise her. She said she was working late, but it was already past 9. I figured I'd bring her some takeout, maybe catch a glimpse of this demanding project. I drove to her office building, a sleek, modern tower that always seemed to hum with silent ambition. Her car was still there, so I parked and walked in. The lobby was mostly empty. The security guard barely looked up as I waved. I took the elevator up to her floor. The lights were dim, most offices dark. I walked past a few empty cubicles, then saw a sliver of light under the door of her department's conference room. I pushed the door open, ready with my cheesy grin and the bag of greasy Chinese food. The grin melted off my face. Sarah was there, all right. But she wasn't alone, and she wasn't working. She was leaning across the conference table, laughing, her hand resting on the arm of a man I'd never seen before. He was older, maybe mid-30s, with a sharp suit and an even sharper smile. My blood ran cold. The takeout bag slipped from my fingers, hitting the carpet with a soft thud. They both looked up, their faces freezing. Sarah's eyes widened, a flicker of panic replacing her easy laugh. "Andrew," she whispered, pulling her hand away like she'd been burned. I didn't say anything, couldn't. My voice felt stuck somewhere in my throat, tangled with bile and disbelief. I just stood there watching her, watching him, the scene replaying in slow motion in my mind. The casual intimacy, the stolen moment, the quiet betrayal. It hit me like a physical blow. The dull ache in my gut morphed into searing pain. She started to cry, of course. The tears came quickly, a river of regret and desperation. She stumbled towards me, reaching out, begging for me to forgive her. She swore it was a mistake, that he meant nothing, that she loved me, only me. The man, her coworker, her affair partner, just sat there looking uncomfortable but not sorry. He probably had a wife, a family, a whole life he was risking for these stolen moments. I couldn't look at her, not really. All I could see was the image of her hand on his arm, her laugh, the way they looked at each other. The trust, the 2 years, the future we'd planned, it all turned to ash in that conference room. "Don't," I managed to choke out, stepping back from her outstretched hand. "Don't even try." The next few days were a blur of numb anger and silent packing. I couldn't stand to be in that apartment, our apartment, anymore. Every corner held a memory, a lie. I packed my things, called a buddy with a truck, and moved out. She cried, she begged, she sent endless texts and voicemails. I ignored them all. The thought of forgiving her, of trying to patch up something so fundamentally broken, was nauseating. What kind of person would I be if I just let that slide? A doormat, a fool, and I was neither, so I moved out of our apartment, and that was it. I haven't seen or heard from her since. I changed my number eventually, blocked her on everything. It was like severing a limb, painful and messy, but necessary for survival. I rebuilt my life, piece by painful piece. I focused on my work, poured myself into my art, spent more time with friends, joined a new gym. I even started dating casually, testing the waters, trying to remember what it felt like to trust someone again. It was slow going. Every time I thought I was healing, a phantom pain would flare up, a reminder of the raw wound she'd left behind. But I was getting there. I was generally okay, doing my own thing, building a new normal for myself. Then last week my world tilted again, not with the violent force of an earthquake, but with the quiet, insidious creep of a poison. I was scrolling through my social media feed, just mindlessly flicking through pictures of old high school friends, kids, and vacation photos. Then I saw it. A mutual friend had posted a picture, a group shot from what looked like a wedding. And there she was in a white dress, smiling brightly, arm in arm with him, the man from the conference room, her affair partner. She was married. The picture hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air out of my lungs. I scrolled back up just to make sure it was definitely her, definitely him, her smiling face, glowing, radiating happiness. Happiness that just months ago I thought we would share, but she was sharing it with him, the man she betrayed me with. A wave of emotions crashed over me, a chaotic storm of disbelief, anger, and a deep, simmering resentment. Why does she get to be happy and I do? The thought burned in my mind, a bitter taste on my tongue. Here I was, picking up the pieces, trying to move on, and she's getting her fairy tale ending. With him, the sheer audacity of it, the injustice, made my hands clench into fists. For a long moment, I just stared at the picture, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. My mind raced, trying to process it. She moved on that fast. She married him, the guy she cheated with. It felt like a slap in the face, a cosmic joke played at my expense. All the pain, all the rebuilding, all the effort I'd put into healing felt trivialized, invalidated. Part of me knew it didn't change anything. I didn't want anything from her anyway. Our relationship was dead and buried. But then another part, a darker, angrier part, screamed. Here I was, generally okay, doing my own thing, and she's getting married to him. It felt like she not only betrayed me but had gotten away with it, unscathed, even rewarded. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it's for the best, I told myself. Maybe he knocked her up so they had to. That cynical thought offered a brief, fleeting comfort, a flicker of schadenfreude that quickly died. Even if it was true, it didn't diminish the sting, the raw injustice of it all. It just fueled the anger. The anger was a slow burn at first, a simmering resentment that churned in my stomach. But as the days passed and the image of her smiling face, radiant in that white dress, refused to leave my mind, the burn intensified. It wasn't just about her or him or even what they did. It was about me. It was about how I felt discarded, easily replaceable, and then left to pick up the pieces while they just moved on, seemingly without a care in the world. I'd always considered myself a calm, rational guy, not someone who harbored grudges or plotted elaborate schemes, but this was different. This wasn't just a breakup. This was a violation of trust, a desecration of something I truly believed in. And now seeing her so happy, so unburdened, it ignited something I didn't know I had inside me. A quiet, insistent voice that whispered, "This isn't fair, this can't stand." The feeling of being okay, of doing my own thing began to sour. Every small victory, every moment of peace felt overshadowed by the image of her wedding. It was a constant, nagging reminder that while I had been left to mend, she had effortlessly transitioned into a new, seemingly blissful life. It wasn't about wanting her back, not at all. It was about the principle of it, the sheer inequity. I found myself replaying every moment of our breakup, every tear she shed, every desperate plea for forgiveness. It all felt so hollow now, so manipulative. Was it all just an act? Was she just buying time until she could solidify her future with him? The thought made my blood boil. Minneapolis, with its familiar streets and comforting routines, suddenly felt stifling. My apartment, once a sanctuary, felt like a cage. Every corner held ghosts of what I thought my future would be. I needed to do something, not for her and certainly not for him, for me, to restore a sense of balance to my world, to make sure that her path to happiness, built on the wreckage of my trust, wasn't quite so smooth. It was a dark thought, a dangerous one, but it felt right. It felt like justice. I started spending more time alone, not out of sadness, but out of a need for focus. I would sit in my living room, staring out at the city lights, my mind running through scenarios. What could I do? What would be enough? It couldn't be anything violent or illegal. That wasn't me. But it had to be something that would make her feel even a fraction of what I had felt. Something that would disrupt her perfect little world, just enough to let her know that some actions, even if they seem to result in happiness, still have a price. It was a dangerous game, one I never thought I'd play. But then again, I never thought my life would be turned upside down by a betrayal that then led to a wedding announcement. This was a new Andrew, forged in the fires of anger and injustice, and he was just getting started. The idea wasn't fully formed yet, but the seed had been planted and it was beginning to sprout. I'm Andrew Wright, and at 26, I thought I had it all figured out. Minneapolis was my home, and the apartment I shared with Sarah felt like the start of everything. 2 years we were together, intertwined, building a life. Then came November, cold and bitter, much like the truth that froze my blood. She was seeing someone else, a guy from her work. The tears, the begging, the pleas for forgiveness, they were just noise. I didn't want any of it. I packed my life into boxes and walked away from her, from us, from the wreckage. I hadn't seen or heard from her since, until now. The news hit me like a physical blow. She was married, married to him, the affair partner. It was a casual conversation, a mutual friend dropping the bomb, completely unaware of the crater it would leave in my chest. My first reaction was a gut punch of disbelief, then a wave of pure, unadulterated anger. Why did she get to be happy? Why did she get her perfect little ending while I was still picking up the pieces? For months after the breakup, I'd been numb, then slowly, painstakingly, I started putting myself back together. I'd focused on work, on my friends, on reclaiming my own space in the city. I'd started running along the chain of lakes, letting the cold Minnesota air scour the bitterness from my lungs. I was okay, generally okay. And then she got married. The okay shattered. The anger was a hot, pulsing thing beneath my skin. It wasn't just that she moved on, it was that she moved on with him. The very person who had fractured my trust, broken my heart. It felt like a cosmic injustice, a cosmic joke at my expense. I found myself replaying every moment, every subtle shift, every lie. The betrayal festered, turning my careful reconstruction into a hollow shell. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling of my new empty apartment, picturing their lives, their happiness, their intertwined hands, and the rage would twist my insides until I thought I might burst. One dreary afternoon, the kind where the gray sky mirrors the inside of your head, I was browsing old social media, a morbid curiosity I couldn't shake. I knew I shouldn't, but a part of me needed to see, needed to confirm. And there it was, their wedding photos, glossy, perfect, sickeningly joyful. Sarah radiant in white, her hand resting on Mark's arm, his name I now knew. Mark looking smug, successful. A thought, a throwaway line from the mutual friend echoed in my mind. It was kind of a rush, fast wedding. And then the Reddit post's exact words, my own bitter thought. Maybe he knocked her up so they had to. It was a cynical thought born of pain, but something about the rush, the way Sarah had cried and begged me to forgive her, how quickly she'd seemingly rebounded. It didn't sit right, it was too neat, too perfect. I found myself digging not out of malice at first, but a desperate need for understanding, for a reason that justified my pain. I wasn't looking for revenge, not consciously, I was just trying to make sense of the senseless. I started with Mark, a quick search. He was a regional manager for a mid-sized tech firm based in St. Paul, seemed squeaky clean. Too clean. I remembered Sarah had mentioned he traveled a lot for work to smaller branch offices in the Midwest. Wisconsin, Iowa, sometimes as far as Nebraska. Then I stumbled upon it, a tiny detail in an old community forum post from a small town in rural Iowa. A local newspaper clipping, faded and pixelated, about a charity run. And there he was, Mark, pictured with a woman and two young children. The caption identified them as Mark Jensen, his wife Clara, and their children Emily and Josh. Jensen, not Mark, but the face was unmistakable. Same eyes, same slightly crooked smile. My heart hammered. Mark Jensen. This was months, maybe a year before Sarah and I broke up. This was while he was seeing Sarah. My stomach dropped. He wasn't just an affair partner. He was a married man with children. And Sarah, my seemingly innocent, tearful Sarah, had been involved with that. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity, the rush wedding, the suddenness. Maybe Sarah had found out about Clara, or maybe Clara had found out about Sarah. The knocked-her-up theory suddenly twisted into something far more sinister. Was Sarah the other woman manipulated only to be forced into a rushed marriage when the truth about Clara became unavoidable? Or was this a desperate attempt by Mark to cover his tracks and save face? The anger at Sarah morphed into something colder, sharper. She wasn't just a betrayer, she was a victim too, perhaps, or perhaps she was complicit in a far grander deception. And Mark, he was a snake, a predator. He'd not only broken up my home, but he'd shattered Clara's, and now he was building a new one on a foundation of lies. I didn't want to destroy Sarah, not anymore. My anger at her had faded, replaced by a strange mix of pity and a cold, hard desire for truth. But Mark, he deserved to have his carefully constructed world exposed, not for my sake, but for everyone he'd wronged. Clara, those kids, and yes, even Sarah, who was now bound to a man who was clearly a master of deceit. I didn't need to do much. The internet was a powerful tool, and truth, once unearthed, had a way of spreading. An anonymous tip to Clara Jensen's local newspaper, attaching the wedding announcement of Mark and Sarah, along with the old charity-run photo, was all it took. Just a quiet suggestion to compare the photos, to look into the dates. A simple, factual email, no malice, no accusations, just information. I tracked the local news for a few weeks, a strange mix of dread and anticipation churning in my gut. And then a small article. Not a scandal, not a headline, but a quiet piece about a local family facing unexpected challenges. It didn't mention names, but the timing, the context, it was clear. Clara had found out, and the divorce proceedings that followed, also quietly reported in the online public records, confirmed it. I didn't gloat, I didn't cheer, there was no triumphant feeling, just a profound sense of quiet. The rage that had gnawed at me, the unfairness that had suffocated me, it all began to dissipate. It wasn't my fight anymore, it never truly was. Mark's world was imploding, not because of me, but because of his own lies. Sarah was likely caught in the fallout, her happy ending crumbling around her, built on a foundation of deceit. My revenge wasn't about making them suffer, not really. It was about exposing the truth, about letting the natural consequences of their actions unfold. And in doing so, I finally truly let go. The weight lifted. The air in Minneapolis felt lighter, the lake shimmered with a new promise, and I finally truly felt free. I could finally begin to build my own happy ending, one based on honesty and integrity, knowing that some knots entangle themselves and some truths simply need a gentle push to be revealed. And that, more than any grand scheme, was my poetic revenge.